So today our topic is sustainable future flight business models, and we'll mainly talk about the motivations and the barriers. Chris?
Hello. So just in the time, my microphone is now working after broadcasting you some amazing music. I hope you can all hear me okay. I'm Chris Parker. I'm the principal investigator for the Coffee project. We're going to be telling you a bit more about this project in detail in a few minutes. But the Coffee project is the reason why we're doing this research and the reason why we're here today to tell you about our initial findings, to get some feedback from you about what you'd like to know more, answer your questions. Now, just so you know, we are recording this event and we're going to be putting an edited version of this video up on our website in the near future. So if you missed something and want to go back and catch it again, you're going to be able to do that. If someone you know might be interested in our research and our findings, feel free to share the video with them. So it's going to be something which we can carry on having a conversation after this. Anyway, I am Chris. My area is user experience. So I bring insights into how people think and feel about interacting with future flight technologies, which are going to be coming in the very near future. And next to me is Chen.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Chen. I'm the RA for this project. Can you guys hear me? Or is there feedback?
I can hear you pretty well. So
okay, thank you. My area is co-design. Second.
Right, I'm going to mute my mic. Right, I'm going to mute my mic and see if that works.
How is the sound now? Okay. Thank you.
Still good?
I think.
Marvelous.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for the disruption. I'm Chen. I'm the research associate for this project. My main area is co-design, designing and delivery workshops that engage public audience and other stakeholders in future flight. And great.
And the other person on the screen who you can see, who unfortunately can't be with us at the moment, is Graham. Graham is from UWE Bristol, down in the West Country. He's a professor of transport, sustainability, and the whole way that people travel and network. So together we have a combination of business insights, user insights, and travel insights. So we're now going to go on to what we're going to do today. So we're going to start with a quick overview of what future flight is. So some of you watching might already have a good idea of what future flight is, and that's very good and strong. But some of you might want to know a bit more about it. So when we say the word drone, what do we actually mean? Then we're going to go into a bit more depth about what the Coffee project is, what we're researching, and what we hope our impact is going to be in the near future. After that, Chen is going to deliver the first session on business motivations and barriers. This is our preliminary research from stakeholder interviews about why businesses are doing what they're doing, what are the issues they're facing, and how can they be overcoming it. As part of Leicestershire Business Festival, this is a really important theme to connect with what we're going to be doing in Leicestershire over the next 5-10 years. Then I'm going to be presenting our initial scenarios for 2025, the kind of environment which all companies or people are going to have to be working well within to succeed. and then finishing off any kind of discussions, networking opportunities. Throughout the event, we are going to have breaks and we are going to have some interactive parts with Miro. So you can sit back, you can relax with a cup of tea, but at some point we're going to want to get you involved in this as well. So I'm going to pass over to Chen to give a brief overview of what the Future Flight Challenge is.
So Future Flight, what is Future Flight? I'll give a very, very short one sentence. I'll say it's an initiative and it's part of the UK, it's part of the UK research and innovation, and it's an initiative to transform the way people and goods fly. And this including building an aviation ecosystem needed to speed up the introduction of electric sub-regional aircraft, advanced air mobility vehicles, and drones into the UK. And this project actually works with industry, academia, government, and the regulator to transform how we would connect with people, delivering goods, and also provide services. And so for everyday people or consumers, there are three types of air vehicles. As you can see, it's the drones that will deliver packages or support the services like emergency or police. And then there is the advanced air mobility vehicles that can do vehicle takeoff and landing that will take up no more than 10 people. And then there is the regional air mobility, where we'll take on more than 10 people powered by hydrogen or other hybrid aircraft power to hop around the cities among the regions. And hopefully that can increase the sustainability and can improve the accessibility and also bring benefits to the UK economy. And for the industry, the UKI has provided some visions and how the stakeholders can work towards this ambition by 2030. As you can see, there's all the little ones on the side around the images. I'll try the laser function here. So, for example, the safety or the scalability or how integrated the system will be, or how sustainable these will be in the future. I won't go through all of them. If you're interested, you can have a look on their website. And so by 2030, there are also some examples, use cases that showing how the new classes of air vehicles will operate in the future. So that here they provided 8 user cases. For example, the rapid airport transfer, or the emergency services, or intracity traveling, or the rural and disconnected transit, or drone delivery, cargo delivery, and maintenance and inspection. And given that, we have quite a tight timeline here, actually. As you can see, from the present day, we're in the development phase, where in the next year, we're hopefully going to demonstration phase, where our services are demonstrated in real world and in large scale and integrated activities with strong socioeconomic value propositions. And then by 2026, we'll have industrialization, where services become more commercially viable, fostering investment and increased levels of production, and which will bring the cost down. And then in 2028, where hopefully the service scale up and become more geographically distributed as demand and social acceptance increase. And then by 2030, the last phase of the implementation, there'll be fully integrated mobility as a service operations. So in terms of the timeline, does anybody have any first impressions? If you think this is really well thought out, this is where we're heading, or you think this is way too quick? If you want to give a little, for people think that this is a really thought out timeline, we will definitely reach there. Give me a hand raise if you want. If not, if you think this is way too fast, also feel free to give a hands up. Yeah, I think it's too quick. Tony thinks it's too quick. Yeah? Okay, so I don't know if you guys have been reading the news, because it seems like the future is already here. And when we're talking about drone delivery and air travels, so you can see from the news from The Guardian or BBC, we can already see Amazon is already pledges to parcels in hour using drone deliveries. And it's very funny to see the news headlines where this says Amazon delivery drones, how the sky could be the limit for market dominance, where this one says sky is not the limit. So maybe that's something to ponder over. Is it a limit if the sky is a limit? And we'll go on. I don't know if anybody have any first impressions or your knowledge of drone, but we have a video of what drone delivery are. Please let me know if the sound works, or yeah, let me know if there's any technical issues.
What do you know about drones? The UK government is currently exploring how drones could be more widely used to make deliveries. Early stage drone deliveries have focused on moving medical items, but in the future, drones could also be used to make retail and food deliveries directly to people's homes. But why should you care? Now is the time for you to get involved in research and debate so you can help decide if, when, where, and how often delivery drones should fly. What could it mean to have delivery drones? Using drones to deliver items could help reduce carbon emissions. Drone deliveries may be able to replace journeys where there is a need to move smaller items. However, for larger payload requirements, drones can quickly become less efficient than vans. Therefore, drones are unlikely to reduce congestion. Drones could also create some new demand and change the way we consume products, therefore potentially increasing carbon emissions from other sectors. It could bring about changes to the types of jobs that people do in the future. Drones would be largely automated, with a remote pilot controlling multiple drones across an area. What does this mean for me? Delivery drones would fly in lower airspace. Therefore, they would be visible from the ground, and you may also be able to hear them. How much these sensory additions to our environment matter will vary from person to person, but also will depend on where and how often they would fly and where they might land. The impact of this may feel different when you're at the beach versus when you're at work. Every person is different. Are drones safe? Delivery drones can detect and avoid hazards while in flight. These, along with airspace booking systems, can help determine the best route. Drones do not rely on one single part to keep them in the air. So, for example, if one rotor was to stop working, it could continue to fly using the other rotors. If a drone was to completely fail, the speed at which it falls to the ground will depend on its shape and weight. Drones have fail-safe systems to slow their descent in the event of a failure. For example, a parachute may open. These fail-safe systems that slow their speed of descent should a failure occur, reduce the risk of injury. Buildings and vehicles can provide protection from a falling drone, and the number of people outside varies by the type of place, time of day, and even the weather. The likelihood that a falling drone would cause injury is greater where there are more people outside on the ground below, so the risk of injury should a failure happen would vary from location to location. You can find out more information at www.e-drone.org. This video was produced by eDrone, with research funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council.
Right, hopefully we all learned something. I learned something new from this video. And let's move on to the eVTOLs. So these are the electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. This is a render how it might look like in the future. And there are many companies that are trying to make those nowadays. And this is just a demonstration where you can see it carries 5 passengers, including the operator, the pilot. Very much like what we have in terms of taxi. So they're also called air taxis. And now I'm going to hand over for Chris to talk about our project, the Coffee Project.
Thank you, Chen. Now, one thing I want to say is future flight technologies is a very vast array, and what we've presented is a very simple introduction to these. So if you've got more questions about what these technologies are, what they're not, or anything else, do let us know and we can go into more detail about this later on. So the Coffee Project. Now what this is, it started with a problem. The problem is that a lot of the technology has been developed with an engineering mindset first. So the challenge of, can we do this? Can we build these devices? And then, very sensibly, it's been about businesses. Can we apply them? Now, that might get to people saying, well, job done. We've got something you can make and you can make a business. But in UKRI, UK Research Innovation, there's growing awareness that you've got to think about the people a lot more. So what is the social aspect of future flight? How would these technologies coming into our society change it? And does that influence how we design them, how we engineer them, and how we run the businesses? So this started a little while back and has spawned a collection of research projects funded by UK Research Innovation, which is government's research funding body, if you're unaware. So we are one of many projects looking at this social element of future flight from one angles. Now, our angle is more the business and co-creation area. So our mission statement is to establish future flight opportunities for aerospace, industry technologies, businesses, and social entrepreneurs. The Coffee Project will explore future flight's emerging innovation ecosystem while elaborating co-development methods to ensure broad stakeholder participation. The short of that is, if you want to get the people who are most influenced and most impacted into the conversation on the development of those business models and the development of how you apply them, you need to be able to do it effectively and efficiently. So we are laying the groundwork for those effective and efficient discussions between people. Now, why is this really important? Why should we bother doing this? Now, the future flight technology is evolving rapidly. When we showed that slide before about the timeline by 2030, we had a whole load of aeronautical engineers saying, no, you can't do this. And there was a lot of dismissal and think, well, it can't be worth that much money. These people are just making numbers up. Maybe they're right. I'm not going to turn around and say the professional opinion is wrong, but I do know that a few weeks later, we've seen the first eVTOLs and the first delivery drones being given regulatory approval. They are being press released about we're doing this. Maybe the timeline isn't quite as fast as the press releases want to say, but it's a damn sight faster than anyone ever thought was possible 1 year ago, 2 years ago. So it is changing fast. And we've got a real catastrophe facing us if we don't do it right, because we don't need to bang on the door of climate change, but if we invent a whole new technology that burns through fossil fuels like crazy, spews them into the atmosphere, and we're just accelerating it, something's gone wrong. If it makes people more lonely and more dependent on monopolies, something's gone wrong. So we've got to stop social splitting. We've got to prevent further climate change. And if you don't think about these early, it's been very difficult to get them later on. The way that people are engaging with citizens is very varied. Large companies say they're doing it, how much they really are is questionable. So really got to say, these critical decisions going in now for this rapid evolution, we need to have these conversations early. So 5 years time, it'd be too late. So what do we aim to do? Well, we've got 3 aims. If we can do all of these by next June, then we're doing pretty well. So this is how we're going to come back to this and sort of mark our progress as we're going along. So I want to know, how do the motivations of aerospace industry technologists, businesses, and social entrepreneurs influence the emerging future flight business models? So like, why are we doing this? And what can we learn from that? Can socially and environmentally sustainable future flight scenarios exist? And if they can, how can we co-create them by engaging all these people? And then how can these emerging future flight ecosystems be nudged and steered to focus on business models which are viable businesses and meet the pressing sustainability concerns? So that's really an important part. And for those of you who are not aware, nudging is a really important term, where it's not saying all of you lot, you are doing this thing, and forcing people to change or forcing a certain route. So, for example, through regulation. Instead, what it's doing is putting the motivations and drivers out there which encourage a certain behaviour path, which is often more effective in the long term. The timeline. So we started this project in April and we began data collection in June. We're now in November, so getting to the end of 2023 and reaching the end of studies 1 and 2. What we're presenting today here is on studies 1 and 2. It's not the complete work. There are some work in progress parts and we are going to flag them up. But what we're going to do is by January next year, take all our findings, take all our completed work and go into actually developing the business models. So everything you see today is the groundwork for, right, now we know the theory, let's put this into practice. So if you're listening to what we're going to be saying today and thinking, it's very interesting, that's some interesting theory parts, but what does it really do? Then I strongly encourage you to sign up to the Coffee Project website. And we've got a newsletter. So when we get those practical bits of we've done this in person with that company and this is the outcome, it's going to be delivered through there. I wish I could do it today, but time is a linear line. And then by June 24, not 25, going to start a year extension there. By June 24, we're going to have everything wrapped up and completed, and hopefully doing a lot more events like this to guide businesses on getting the most out of future flight in the best way. So before we get started on our dissemination activity about telling you what we found, we want to know some bit more about you. So on the Miro board, so first, Chen, could you repost that link? Perfect. On the Miro board at the top, you will see a little tag which says welcome to coffee. If you can please jump on there and you'll see a whole load of boxes saying name, email, and why I'm here. If you can spend a few minutes telling us why you're here. Actually, I'm going to put a timer. Sorry, it's thinking me up. I'm going to put a timer, a 5-minute timer. So everyone jump on there and spend 5 minutes just telling about who you are. If you've got any comments as you go along, I'm just going to share my screen and show you what I can see. There we go. So there is a comment section to the right. So if you've got any thoughts or anything so far, feel free to put your comments and thoughts in there if you like. But yeah, with a few minutes to go, let's populate our who we are and why we're here box. So whilst we're waiting, I know that many of you filled your cards in already. Got one comment here, which is anonymous. I love the ideas and really hope the schedule goes to plan. Actually, that's the by 2030 schedule we saw a few minutes ago. And Nick, don't worry, we're going to be popping this on our website in the next few days. So you can rewatch the start if you want to later on.
Great.
So I hope the schedule goes to plan, although I'm a little hesitant with having experienced barriers in aviation, that there are some significant barriers to overcome from toning. Yes, we agree. It's always very easy to get a prototype up and running, but it's very difficult to get something really good working. Just ask Elon Musk how Cybertruck is going. He'll tell you the same story. So yeah. So I didn't want to spend too much time getting into our sister projects because we could be here for the whole session, and I want to respect your time well. Many of our sister projects are looking into the regulatory mess that is UK aviation, of just having a very good flying machine does not equal ability to fly. And we've got other projects in the broader future flights research umbrella looking into the actual aviation challenges. It's be able to pick up a 20 kilo freight and transport it across the Bristol Channel isn't too challenging in itself until you throw a headwind in there and hurricane conditions, and what you're delivering is quite time critical. So those niche areas are being investigated in lots of detail. But yeah, Tony, I completely agree. Okay, so our 5-minute timer is up. So thank you for everyone to fill their card in. If you've yet to fill your card in about who you are and why you're here, then feel free to just stay on that page, add more bits in. As we're talking, feel free to add more comments into that general comments box. We will be returning this later on. So you've got this channel available to you. Also, if you throw anything in the chat, we will get around to those questions and comments as we go through. So whatever channel works for you, feel free to use it in your own way. So now, the reason why you're here, want to hear about our preliminary research into motivations and barriers for future flight. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague Chen, who will give you an overview of our initial research findings.
Thank you, Chris. So for our first study, our focus is on the motivations and barriers to sustainable future flight business models, where we interviewed entrepreneurs, professional publics, technologists, and policymakers with expertise and experience in economics, logistics, aviation engineering, and occupational psychology. And to give an overview of the market segments within the future flight, we're dividing it into 4 general market segments. So starting with eVTOLs, there is your fly drive, which is what you're seeing just now, is the air taxis, flying cars. And then there's urban air mobility, where you have to travel to a vertiport via other transportation, train, scooter, bicycle. And then you have the drones, and what we call is drone in the box. So they're service drones that doing building surveys or inspecting wildlife. And then there's delivery drones. I call it drone with a box. So they're carrying your packages, like what you see with Amazon delivery. And the key differences with the fly drive is actually it's a bimodal transportation vehicle where it can change from flying to driving. So it will be something that probably privately owned, like individuals, professionals, or governments. And then you got the urban air mobility. Like I said, it's you need to travel to the vertiport. It's almost like a bus stop where we have to go to a bus stop to take a bus, and they can carry, for example, below 10 passengers, and then they can fly about 50 kilometers from city to city, about 100 or 150 miles. And the reason the distance, you got different figures here, I'll use my laser point, is because we're getting information from different channels. You can see it's already a kind of uncertainty with the facts here. And then with drone in the box, because they got rechargeable stations, so they can just go back to the station and recharge themselves. Where with delivery drones, right now they can pretty much only carry 2 kilograms and usually are used for last mile delivery. Sorry for the typo there, last mile delivery, and they will be interacting with public. So with technology, they're also on different stages where FlyDrive will be using proven technology, where urban air mobility is still unproven, is still in progress, where the service drone and delivery drone, they're both commercially available. And then with business models, since that's the focus of our topic here, these are what we anticipate. They're not set in stones yet. But with the FlyDrive, yes, they'll be privately owned, and where the urban air mobility will be very much following a public transportation model, a service model, where with the drones, there will be different business models. But from a case study, we can see it's a fully automated on-demand drone services and delivery drones. As left to our imaginations, Amazon's will have their own business model, and other companies will have their own as well. And one thing I would like to point out is actually the autonomy levels, because when we talk about the autonomy level for different flying vehicles is not as straightforward as we would thought would be. So you have the piloted, just like you have a driver today, they'll be piloted. And then with drones, what you see is unpiloted, but actually in between, there is a lot of in between autonomous level. So you can have a pilot that's operating the one-to-one vehicle in their own office, or you can have a pilot that's operating a group of drones or of air taxis or the urban air mobility vehicles. So, and it's not just if they can do it technologically speaking, it's also if the public will accept such arrangement. So if you feel safe and happy to ride an urban air vehicle that has no pilot in it. So from our findings, we have found some trends. So there is an unlikelihood of aviation business transitioning to carbon zero air mobility for various reasons. We will elaborate later. And then the startups will likely to lead the future flight industry development with a focus on the niche market. And the social disparity will be a critical barrier to public acceptance. So jumping to our practical implications. So if you're regulators or people working in the governments, we would really want you to roll out regulations and standards on the global level. These are demanded by the business and the public, and really need to address the regulatory body skills shortage and increase the physical capacities. And then there's also providing financial incentives for business to develop relevant technology and also adopting new fuels. And so for business, if you want to have success in the future flight, it'd be really good idea to evolve the company culture and grow the human resource through diverse hiring, and also commit to a sustainable approach, and also revise strategic business models to minimize transaction costs. So how we come to this conclusion, having this practical advice, is from three contexts. So first context is a technological context, and second is the organizational context, and third is environmental context. And this is depending on the theoretical groundwork, theoretical approach we have, which is following the TOE framework, which look at the factors from these three contexts. So I want to talk about the fuel availability and readiness. So it's very clear that business and the public are the awareness of what is green has surpassed the general rhetoric. So a lot of people are very aware of greenwashing at the moment, and so the lack of fuel availability and also alternative fuel has become a barrier for the business to adopt the future flight technology. And also adopting future technology would incur costs that will lower the profit because of this uncertainty over the technology readiness and the scalability. And also in the organizational context, the company culture is quite different, comparing the multinational business to the startups, where the startups would likely to share an entrepreneur spirit and also have a younger demographic that will have a bit more focus on the sustainable approach. And from our findings, we find that human resource is actually a big driver for companies to how they strategize their business model. And comparing to big companies, startups have a less inertia to change because they're building their business on very specific niches, and so they're not tied down to the current aircraft they have. And same to small and medium companies that's in the supply chain where the current aviation is operating in. And coming to the environmental context, this have been identified as the kind of the main barrier is the regulations. So because of regulations, a lot of the business are unable to advance their development, and also around social norms and how the public considers is appropriate. For example, privacy and mental health, how would it be like if you have a vertiport around where you live, right? So coming to that, these three factors within the three contexts have driven to present barriers and motivations and how they play into the future flight. So like we said earlier, the regulations has been a big part of it. And then the infrastructure, for example, the road, how the road is built right now, or the batteries. And then there's the financial incentive. If government is actually putting financial incentive to encourage smaller business to invest. And also, for example, if you put money on for big companies to change what fuels they use, then there will be more incentive for them to use a sustainable aviation fuel. And then, like I said earlier, the public acceptance will be a big barrier, and also resources. And what is motivating the business will be profit, if they can make a profit in the future flight, and also public demand. So if public have higher awareness of the fuels that are using and demands more green travel in the future, this will also drive the development of sustainable aviation. And then there's sustainable growth, and this means not only from the environmental aspect, but also economic growth as well. And then there's the entrepreneur spirit, where the personal commitment to building a greener aviation future. And so that will impact on social disparity. So who has access to the future aviation? Is it going to be a rich people's toy, or it will be providing, it actually will increase accessibility, like we just saw in the UKRS roadmap, it will actually provide more accessibility to the general public. And then there's decarbonization, if the future flight can drive the decarbonization in the future in 2030 or in 2050, and also if it will provide sustainable economic growth in the UK. So we're mobilizing the TOE framework, the Technology, Organization, Environmental Framework, to identify factors that will support implementing a circular economy approach to the business. And what we found so far is the environmental factors are critical to startups and smaller, medium enterprises and multinational companies, where in contrast, the organizational and the technological factors, their importance will actually vary depending on the organization's scale of operation, the market segment that they operate in, and the culture, company culture. So that is what I have for now. And if you guys have any questions or comment, please feel free to put into the comment section we have on the Miro. And I will hand it over to Chris.
Hello. So as I said before, I'm a UX design expert and Chen is a user-centered design expert. We both found a serious bug in Microsoft's new PowerPoint system, where once you got this ready to go, if you've made any changes to the PowerPoint file, it doesn't work very well. You won't see them in presentation. So very, very minor thing, no need to worry. We've got a quick 5-minute break coming up. But before we take that 5-minute break, we've got one more thing to show you. So comments on our results. Let's go and do task number 1. So in a second, I'm going to share my screen. Here we are here. So task number 1, we've got holiday post notes and a positive to negative scale. I'd like to know what you think about our results so far. What comments do you have about what Chen was just talking about? Is there anything that you like and think is really good? Is there anything you think is really bad or not too sure? Maybe got some questions. So could you tell us more about this thing, or what if that scenario? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just pop this in over there, and then another 5 minutes to take a break. So nice relaxing time to share your thoughts, share your comments, and make any requests of us. Okay, that is 5 minutes on the timer for our comments. Got a couple of comments there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share the screen. I think with the whole keeping everything on time, respecting your time as participants, we're going to go look into these, answer them, and then move on with the next section. So the first one we've got, and these are both in the neutral to slightly positive section, because we do love reverse categorizing scales. We have some amazing aviation technical specialties in the UK, and have much interest from the industry as a whole. What have you had? And if you could say which of your partners are interested in helping. So I'm not sure I'm free to tell you the people that we're partnering with in the in the advisory board and the people we're working with. It's not something that we have openly discussed in our meetings about like how widely we can present. So I think to respect their confidentiality, we wouldn't want to say too much. However, the general feedback and feel in the room with the large and small tech companies is they're all very interested in all things we're doing. So when we're talking about co-development of how you roll these technologies out, or talking about how you can have a more sustainable future from the environmental and social points, or any of these questions which our sister projects are having, generally all like, yes, let's talk about this. What's the realities of how things are done, and what the cost of it's going to be, and the regulatory challenges start coming in. It does make it a bit more challenging to say, yes, of course we're going to be doing all of this. But generally, I think everyone's on the same page. So I'd be very happy to share more resources about the sister projects shortly via our website. So yeah, it's quite good interest. Chen, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah. Also, I realise that I may not be giving the best answers to everyone in the time we've got. So if there's not a question which you've got and you'd like to have a more deeper conversation afterwards offline, let me know, drop me in chat, drop me an email at c.parker@elwood.ac.uk, and we can carry on further. So the second question is, interested in the environmental impact of your participants, like, are they worried about job losses? Okay, so there's two questions around there about environmental impact and job losses. So the first one, environmental impact, is a real interesting one, because it was one of the first conversations all the projects had when we first got together to create this umbrella of research projects. Why are we even doing this when it's the hottest day of the year and we're thinking about building more stuff? So one of the answers is we're already burning through a lot of fossil fuels and creating large carbon emissions doing the things we're doing. Getting people to change their behavior is very challenging. If you want an example of this, look at Manchester and cycling and the trouble they've got people getting off their bike, out of their cars into their bikes in a very flat, congested city. So having a replacement technology that is run on either electricity, which can be generated from sustainable sources, or using hydrogen power. Obviously, hydrogen doesn't burn into carbon emissions in the same way. So you could replace them with greener alternatives to existing ways. You have greater research, innovation and investment in alternative energy sources, which has impact down the line. We are likely to see breakthroughs in physics and engineering that we will not know the impact of for some time, but they're going to be very positive. So the environmental impact from the fuel part is very positive. There is a negative side which doesn't get talked about as much, which is, for example, you can get a car, you can buy a Tesla, it's got great battery technology, and you can power it via a wind turbine. That's really good. Except we needed to make that car in the first place. We need to manufacture it, we need to mine these materials, we need to refine the materials, and there's a carbon cost of that car all on the way that the batteries will not save you on. The offset from having the wind turbine will not offset the amount of carbon in manufacture. A bike is different in that because it has a very different carbon output, you actually save enough carbon so that the manufacturing is okay. You've offset the manufacturing costs. It's the only vehicle that does that. So there will be an environmental impact in making this stuff, and that's something we've got to consider. So I think responsible implementation is a very important thing to consider, in that the fewer of these you have, the better. But then it's a combination of the fewer you need to achieve the goal. And the goal will be based on the business needs, the wider society needs, etc. That's quite a long answer, I know. Don't know who answered that question or if you've answered that yet. Second part about job losses, we are about to run a workshop for members of the public in Bristol next week, where we're going to be talking to people who are working parents, we're talking to retired people, interested people in the community, so you're non-experts. And one of the things we're talking about them is job losses. So I don't have a very good answer to you right now. Next Thursday afternoon, I will have a very good answer because we'll have had discussions on this. So watch our website for the updates is the simple answer to that. But if you wrote that question about environmental impact, then please drop me an email and I'll be very happy to have a chat with you next week about what we found and take this conversation further. Okay, I think that's all the questions we've got. So thank you to the few people in the chat. So that is part one complete with great success. So Chen, could you please share the slides again, please? Wonderful. So I'm going to skip the break for now because we've had a bit of 5-minute break and a bit of downtime. But if anyone feels they want to step away from the computer, take a few minutes break, then feel free. As I said, this will be recorded and put on our website very soon, so you can rewatch anything if you feel you've missed it. So the next thing I want to talk about is our study 2. Now, study 2 is a little bit different from study 1. Study 1 was all about talking to businesses about why they're doing this and what their concerns and motivations going forward. Study 2 is all about how can we co-create these future visions. So one thing we know we can create, we can't co-create a eVTOL, or can't create a flying taxi, we can't co-create a drone, but we can co-create the world they live within. And the way people approach co-creating visions for the future, if members of the public co-create them very differently to, let's say, business leaders or engineers, then that tells us that you need a different kind of co-creation approach when working on this. But if there's very similar ways between the two, then, well, you need a similar approach. So Study 2 is the first stage of developing this method of co-developing the future flight business models, bringing together a diverse range of stakeholders. So starting in August, we ran our first workshops where we brought together a whole range of people. So far, they've been about businesses and technology. Coming up next week, we got a workshop on members of the public, so it's an ongoing work in progress. And we asked them what they feel is really important in the UK's future by 2050. What events are likely to happen? And these can be good events, can be bad events. And we were saying to them, well, if these events happen, how would that affect business? If you want to create this new technology, this new service, will that stop you doing it? Do we need to invent something new to overcome that along the way? Or is that just a very minor ripple in the world, even though we think of it as quite a big thing? So we explored topics like that for whole days on end. It was very detailed, some very rich data. But to keep things very quick and brief and simple for today, we came up with these critical categories in that what people were talking about fit into these boxes. So that was telling us that if the most important things that people that know the field are talking about fit into these categories, then ignoring any of these is probably a problem. So in thinking about, in planning for the next 5-10 years, integrating any kind of future flights, either deliveries or eVTOL into your business, you've got to be thinking about these, or there could be some problem. So going very quickly over these: socio-economic perceptions, so the impact of this technology on society is really important, as in next week's workshop. How people perceive the safety and acceptability of the technology, how these technologies work with health, what the impact is on travel, what kind of fuels they're using and the availability of these fuels, the interaction with the new geography, so the land use, the population, how dispersed it is, the impact of climate change on the weather and operation, the amount of goods that are moved around by freight, the advance in technology manufacturing, and of course the regulation. So these are all the subcategories there, all trying to fit into these things. So if you want a quick takeaway of this, if you are considering, can I apply drone delivery in my business, or should it be something I'm worried about? Think about these categories. Go, well, how is it integrating into these? Now, some of them may or may not affect you as much. So, for example, health may be more or less important to you at this point, and integration with health services, but it's something where it's critical to at least consider. Otherwise, you might miss something very critical out. So, for example, if you had a wonderful business plan, but you didn't go in detail on the social economic perceptions, may have an issue coming up. So we are going to show you our initial research in a few minutes. But before we do this, I'm really interested to see what you, as the audience, feel about the drivers. So I'm going to jump back onto Miro, and we've got an activity for you. So over here, and if I click on this, I can say bring everyone to me. There we are. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You should be able to see a collection of post-it notes. These are all the most prominent indirect drivers that we created. So a driver is anything that could influence the development and rollout and operation of the future flight technologies, from drones through to eVTOL, flying taxis and everything. A direct driver is something which directly influences those. So, for example, governments give massive subsidies to eVTOL manufacturers. That's great if you're BAA and you're creating some new eVTOL, but that's a direct driver. That's something that's directly on there. Indirect drivers are things where it's not about future flights, but it has a big impact. So, for example, resurgence in local shopping. Now, if you're shopping very locally in your local town, you don't really need a delivery drone as much. So the demand for delivery drones goes right down. However, if we saw a complete death of local shopping and the high streets, then those delivery drones are looking very important straight away. So we're focusing on those indirect drivers, and it's going to be describing the UK 2050 vision of what the UK could be looking like to help making a solid plan of how things are. I'll go on details about how it is in a minute, but I really want to know for a minute what you guys think. So we've got events that are we've got our matrix here. So we could say things are very likely to occur by 2050, or they are unlikely to occur by 2050. We've got things that are very high impactful and things that are very low impactful. So I want you to come on Miro, spend 5 minutes reading through those post-it notes. Make sure you're familiar with them, you know everything. If you've got questions about what does something mean, just ask us. We can give you more information and tell you so you know what those mean. Then after that, I'm going to give you just 5 minutes for general questions about what's this and anything you want to know. And then up to 50 minutes to just take each of these post-it notes, move on to Matrix and place it where you think it should go. If you think that it doesn't belong where someone's placed, maybe you want to move it a bit. Maybe someone wants to move it back. Maybe you want to add comments or emojis, things. You've got a lot of freedom with this. But I want to know which of these drivers you feel are the most impactful, least impactful, the most likely, and the most unlikely. Before we get going, anyone got any questions? No? Okay. So with 5 minutes on the clock, I'm going to give 5 minutes now to read through them, and then we'll go for some questions. Oh, sorry. Could I please ask you not to move the post notes just yet, so that everyone can read them in one place? Otherwise, you get trying people to read the post-it notes and be familiar with the indirect drivers whilst they're flying around, which was quite challenging. So 5 minutes for reading and then answering questions. So off you go. Okay, so I get the feeling that we've got through this. The moves that we want to make have been made. So I'm just going to stop the timer there. And that is a really great job. Now, all of you are now very familiar with our indirect drivers that we're using so far. Now, bear in mind, study 2 is still ongoing. So when we get to the final steps of the study, there might be some drivers that are very important, which we've not thought of yet because they haven't come up in the workshop next week, or some other bits. But you're very familiar with what these are. Now, before I go further, does anyone have any comments on what we've done here? Any drivers that you feel, things that we should have in here, but we're not currently talking about? No, okay, that's a good thing. So also, I'm going to point your attention, we've got no additional comments in the comments box. That's completely fine, just putting it out there. So what we're going to talk about now is our designer's reflection, our initial reflection on what we found, what we feel as an informed design team is the most important things to consider when developing these future technologies by 2050. The first concept to think about are baseline trends. Now, a baseline okay, so Tony, no worries. It's been great to come through the barrier. Couldn't click access the chat in time. Okay, Tony, if you want to type your comment or you want to turn your microphone on and speak to us, whichever way works for you the best.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me along today. It's a really interesting topic. So for me, one of the things that is going to be a huge barrier that I think you could use one of those posts is how busy airspace is going to be by the time you're looking 2050.
Yeah.
From a work perspective, we're worried about it now, and it's just getting busier, and especially a low airspace, the heights you're talking about, is going to be phenomenally busy.
That's a really good point. I've made a post note on there. Where would you place that on the matrix?
Top right.
Top right. Okay.
Absolutely top right.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I don't believe it came up in our previous workshops. So Chen, would you have any comment on that?
Sorry, I have very bad feedback over here. I couldn't really hear what Tony said.
Do airplace busyness, like how crowded it's going to be, did that come up as a driver in the previous workshops or any of the interviews from Work Package 1?
How crowded the air business will be.
Oh,
We
that should
have
that should be busy. So not businesses in The Apprentice, businesses and like bees.
how busy the airspace will be.
Yeah.
We have some feedback on the policymaker and how how you need to establish health and safety standards. I think that speaks to a bit of the airspace overcrowding, but there's no direct comment on that one. And I think as part of the development for now is definitely in the conversation, especially with how drones will in contact with other aircraft and or air users.
Okay, that's great. So so thank you for that, Tony. It's really good. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm clicking at. Yeah, baseline trends. Baseline trends are the things which are potentially very likely to occur. So things that we feel are very, very likely to occur. But we're not too sure about what impacts they're going to have. So in this group, we're going to take it very qualitatively around here. The impact is a bit less certain because if everyone, and the reason why this is done this way is if everyone is certain something is going to be high impact and everyone's certain that it's likely to occur, we're going to be planning for it already. It's going to be in that zeitgeist already. Probably doesn't need much pointing out. It's likely to have very strong policy going along with it. Whereas when things are not sure how likely they are to happen, maybe a lot, maybe a less, then they can be very overlooked often, and then they sneak up and you have large impact. So it looks like in this group, taking a very qualitative look at this, NHS being more distributed, increased public awareness and buy into future flights. Lots of advances in other transport modes, Hyperloop. I do have comments on Hyperloop, which I'll save for another day. If you want to know them, please email me. Public see the increased convenience of future flight technologies. So these are all things where it looks like you feel as a group, you are thinking it's likely to occur, but you're not sure about the impact, it's a bit unsure. Now, what we did as a design team is we ran a pilot of what we're going to be running in a few weeks' time with a lot of industry experts. And this is called Delphi. Now, Delphi is where you give people a large collection of items, in our case, indirect drivers, and you ask them questions of how likely is this to occur and how much impact is it going to occur, very much like you've done on this. And then you get the results back, you crunch a bit of maths, and you go, well, let's tell everyone the results. So you go back to the group of people and say, hey, here's what all your peers think. What do you think? And then people get to adjust their original score and they create a new version. Do this 2 or 3 times. And then you can do some lovely statistics and look for measures such as cap and measure agreement, which is a very fancy way of saying how close people are at rating the same thing. And then you look for scores which have a very high statistical convergence on agreeing on the likelihood of event occurring. And we're biasing that only for drivers which were voted in the very high likely to event quadrant. And then you look at the impact being very distributed in the scores, so a very low agreement on impact. So when you've got things which are high likely to occur and low but not sure impact, that makes a trend. We've got your trends here, which is really interesting. So let's compare that quickly to what we as a design team created as our trends when we ran our Delphi. So Chen is just showing the screen now. So jumping forward a few slides. Could you go back one slide, please? So we put changes in weather and fewer physical shops. So that's a really interesting outcome for a start. So, we got changes in weather, for example, on much lower certainty on likely to come, but still in the high impact area. And the fewer physical shops, I'm not sure where people put that. Yeah, so going back to a screen here, it seems that as a group of intelligent people, part of a webinar, you place this in the high impact, not sure about occurrence area. So that's a quite interesting event. It's not wrong, not right. This is all very qualitative, but it's very different to ours. Because the next thing we did in the analysis was look for axes. And an axis is something that can describe the future. So Chen, can you share the slides again, please? So when we're thinking about describing the future, we've got baseline trends saying, well, we're pretty sure these things are going to happen. Not sure about the impact, but we're sure these things are going to happen. For us, it was weather and fewer shops. So the quadrants to look into that can define the scenarios. These are things where if they happen, they're going to have quite a high impact, but we're not sure if they're going to happen. We're really not sure. So same statistical process before, using Delphi and looking for high agreement on high impactness and low agreement on the likelihood to occur. So I'm going to just share my screen quickly. So I'm sorry I'm asking you to tap dance a bit, Chen. If we zoom in here, so an axis, it would be more about really good agreement on being a high impact area. Now, one thing that's very important to point out is what we're saying in our results in the thing about showing a second. This is our design's reflection on our results so far. It's not about what will be found. We'll be running this again on a large scale with a lot of experts very soon. The results will be available on our website, hopefully by the end of December. Research never straight path, but as soon as they're available to the public, we're going to be putting them on website. So to find out the very generalizable expert opinion, it'll be available there. So where we are as a group, you've said that the high impact pretty likely to occur, but we're not sure about the occurrence. We list looking at the shift to large corporations creating monopolies, fewer physical shops and more online shops, more older adults, and the scarcity of water. So those are the areas that you thought. So I'm going to just invite you to, as I present our design's reflection as we go along, to think, what is the difference between what we're presenting, what you guys have seen, and what could a future look like if we took, for example, I think shifting to large corporations and Chen, what do you think?
Shifting to large corporations.
Yeah, if we're to choose 2 out of these 4 to create a new future scenarios axis, which 2 would you choose? I'm going to choose shifting to large corporations. Which one would you choose?
Choose more older adults in the society.
Great, I was thinking that one too. So as I'm talking about these quadrants that we've reflected on, maybe think about those 2, about older adults and large corporations. how that might create different axes for planning in the future. But anyway, let's go through what we had in our designs reflection. I am also aware that we've got about 20 minutes on the clock for this session, so we will be finishing on time, and I'm aiming to finish a little bit early, so this bit will go relatively fast. So in our design reflection, what we feel as a team is going to be very highly impactful if it occurs, but we're not sure how likely to occur, this through multiple rounds of Delphi, is tolerance of the drones in public. And we're looking at drones replacing humans for deliveries. So what we did, up to the matrix, created 4 scenarios. We're going to run through very, very quickly. Now you'll see that each arm of the matrix has some factors in, which is saying, well, from our research, what we've seen in the project so far, when you increase in this direction, so you have higher public tolerance of drones in the public, you get these things happening. We predict these things will happen based on our research. And then if you've got, for example, lower tolerance, so we're going to ban future flight in public spaces, what will be the impact of that? So you'll see parts of each arm reproduced in each window. The first scenario, I think, is TS. So it's where the future 2050 version of us, we're tolerant of future flight, but we're quite skeptical. So we're going to be integrating. We could be integrating drones in our infrastructure. We could be putting more emphasis on drones and less on public transport. And we have physical stores shifting away from storerooms of buying things more into showcases. At the same time, you're going to have rural populations are going to be affected because we're still going to be using human deliveries, so they're not going to have the advantage of that. And this really holds back the advanced air mobility future flights from becoming what it potentially could be, because we tolerate it, but we don't really want it too much. We like our deliveries and services delivered by people, so it's a lot more people focused. Alternatively, well, what happens if society says, no, actually, we don't mind if these drones take away our jobs? Yeah, let delivery person be a drone rather than a human. In that case, there could be greater inequality happening. You could be looking at decentralized distribution networks away from traditional hubs where humans are more around. If there's any issues with the drones, then society is really affected. So if a power outage could have a much more disastrous impact than it currently could. Although this could also support rural communities a lot better, because if areas are hard to reach, we think of that in terms of roads and tyres and rails. But if you think hard to reach via skies, well, suddenly it becomes more easier to live on an island, or it becomes more easier to live in a rural part of the country that before wouldn't be possible. And that's when you are tolerant and dependent. That's the most flag-waving version of the future that we've created. Alternatively, or maybe you are intolerant, but you are dependent, which is you don't really want them in public space. People don't want to see them, but they're doing all the jobs. To me, this is the least likely of the quadrants, but there's many things around there. So in this area, you end up having depots where you travel to. So rather than your drones coming to your house and doing everything, it's going to a local area, then you do that. A bit like Amazon lockers. Maybe this could decrease the green belt land or areas, and drones become more important in there. One positive part is there's a lot of abandoned sites where maybe it was used one industry before, that industry collapsed and just been left around there. So could we repurpose these sites into these hubs for drones? And the fact that we don't want them in public spaces means that we've got to route them somewhere. These are very positive areas to route them into. And because we're not going to be allowing drones flying over our heads, so our air taxis aren't going to take off, pun not intended, then you say, well, we've got to have public transport, maybe we could have urban, so regional aviation, so above 50 kilometers, we're flying with these hydrogen-powered areas, but not in the urban spaces. So anything under 50k is now banned. Okay, so we need to have a better infrastructure, public transport, getting people from these places they live over to those new redeveloped hubs for regional aviation to make them more commercially viable, and all the things that happen along the way. Now, one thing that'd be very interesting to look into, probably in a future research project, which we won't have time for on coffee, is how to make the surrounding areas of these repurposed sites more flourishing. Because after all, just building something isn't enough. If you ever looked at Manchester United football stadium, you'll know that you got an incredibly wealthy football stadium with incredibly wealthy footballers running around and very poor housing areas all around. Having lived next to it for a while, I can say there's not much going on apart from football, which, you'd expect there to be a larger halo effect. So it's a way we can create a large halo effect, create new business opportunities with these redeveloped transport zones. And the fourth hub is IS, so intolerant and skeptical. This is the least flag-wearing option, where humans are really doing the jobs and we don't want these things above our heads. So unlike the previous things where there's always something really good about future flight, we've embraced it in some part. In this form, we've pushed future flight away. So this is the least investment, this is the least opportunities. Thinking in a business case, which we are talking about in this festival, this is a possibility. As far as we're concerned as a research team, as our reflections, what we've known so far, this future where the drones and regional aviation and air taxis flying above your head, delivering parcels and your Amazon 1 hour packages happening, that might not happen. We are not sure. We are as sure that society is going to reject it as we are sure that society's going to be loving it. Now, that is quite a strange place to get to the conclusion of today, and maybe we should have started with that at 1 o'clock. But as part of the whole business festival feel, investing in technologies, looking for business opportunities and exploiting them in some way, we're not yet at the place of saying yes, we're not yet saying no. We feel as a design team, it's a maybe. Now in January, when we start running our niche workshops and developing things, this might change for us. We're going to get more things. Maybe by December, when we've got a broader range of experts involved, maybe this vision is going to be changing. So please sign up to our newsletter, sign up to our website. I'm happy to communicate further after this event, but we've not yet seen anything to confirm which kind of quadrant we're looking into. This is still playing out. There's a lot of things at place, as I think Tony says earlier in the comments about barriers in the aviation. Aviation is a really complex industry, and as soon as one thing goes wrong, the whole industry can have huge consequences. Again, look at the nuclear industry. They're still fighting a PR battle. So yeah, it's these four potential scenarios to reflect on, to think about. Now, if we're to run this different with what you guys were thinking about as a group, saying, well, your baseline trends are people will buy into these things, and we're going to be having corporations shifting more out of society. We would be redrawing this if we're doing it today. If we had another hour, we could redraw it, but I want to respect your time. You can have more monopolies, less monopolies, and more smaller companies. And they have more older adults, less older adults. And what would that look like? What would future flight look like if we had lots of small entrepreneurs trying technology in new ways versus more Amazons with more money to spend, but in a single way. That would be a different kind of scenario in the future. So that's kind of where we are as a research project at the moment. I would love to give you more detailed bits on this, but I'd like to finish with a sort of few minutes discussion. We've got about 10 minutes of time left, and I'm very keen to finish on time so you can all look at our work properly. We've got, I'm going to share my screen again to go on to Miro. We've got our general comments here. If you spend 5 minutes just thinking about any questions you've got or any comments you've got or things you'd like to know more about or anything at all, and place it on this section of the Miro board, I will call everyone to me in a second. So yeah, please come on this. Let's go through, say, 3 minutes, just drop down any thoughts or comments, and then over the last few minutes, Chen and I will go through, answer what we can, and help you in the best way possible. So I've got 1.5 questions, so we're going to go through that. Incredible amount of work's already gone into this. Road appears long and somewhat difficult times. Is there any way I can maybe get more involved? Yes, Tony. Be really happy to talk to you after this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll send you an email in a few minutes and we can talk further offline. We'll see where things can go. So there's no other questions on that. So before we finish off, does anyone have any comments in the chat or want to turn the microphone on or any other things we do for you? No, in that case, we're finishing a few minutes early, which is absolutely perfect, and I'm delighted at that outcome. So thank you very much for your time. If you've got any other questions or in mind, feel free to drop them on the Miro board. This is staying open. Feel free to drop me an email. I'll put that in a few minutes to email to you lot. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for everything. And I look forward to seeing you in the near future. So bye-bye for now.